Hi, welcome to the flipped classroom, and today we're going to look at integers and absolute value. I know you guys have done this last year, so this isn't really new. So we're just kind of reviewing. Also want to remind you, hey guys, we learned this over the course of, oh my gosh, I don't know, 5-6 days earlier in the year, so I'm kind of consolidating everything into one day here for you to get us kind of reviewing what we did earlier. Integers and absolute value. Integers, remember, are the counting numbers, like what you did in kindergarten, 1, 2, 3. Their opposites, -1, -2, -3, and 0. Absolute value was a vocabulary term we had. It is the distance between a number and 0 on the number line. So if you have a number like 3, the distance from 3 to 0 is 1, 2, 3. Absolute value of 3. If you have the number of -3, it is also 1, 2, 3 units from 0. By the way, hope you wrote that in your margin. Absolute value is always positive. Opposites, two numbers with the same absolute value, but with different signs. So just as I showed right here, 3 and -3 are opposites. Absolute value is always positive. So we had some examples here. Oops, forgot to erase that. But anyway, we'll go through these anyway. The opposite of 8 is -8. The absolute value of 8 is positive 8. The opposite of -12, positive 12. The absolute value of -12, also positive 12. The other thing to remember is that absolute value is a grouping symbol. For order of operations, you do what's inside the absolute value symbol first. So here we have this example of the absolute value of -3. We don't start saying -3 times -3 times -3. We're going to turn the absolute value of -3 into a positive 3, and then perform the exponent operator. So that's positive 27. As opposed to over here, this is not the absolute value, this is just -3. And -3, whoops, times -3 times -3, -27. Now we're going to review how to add integers. Adding integers, or sometimes we use the word combine. I kind of like to use the word combine because, as you're going to see in a minute, adding means sometimes we add, sometimes we subtract. So what we're really doing is combining numbers with different signs. When you use a number line to help you understand this, if you have a positive number, you're going to move on the number line to the right, as this arrow is showing. If you have a negative number, you're going to move to the left. Hopefully you're writing that down in your packet. We're going to start looking at this example, 7 plus -5. So you start at 0, we're going to go 7 units to the right. Then I just kind of put an arrowhead on the end there. Now we're going to combine with that -5. So we're going to start where we stopped at 7, and we're going to go 5 to the left. And then there we are, we ended up at positive 2. So 7 plus -5 is positive 2. Let's look at another example. Oh, I'm sorry, I wanted to point something out to you about this to remind you. This visual, I love this visual on the number line. It really kind of shows what's going on here. Look at this on the number line. You see that these arrows are overlapping. And an overlap is a visual to show subtraction. So that's kind of weird. We're adding 7 and -5, but in essence what we did was subtract. Okay, let's look at another one. We're going to look at -1 plus -3. In this case, we're going to start at 0. We're going to go 1 left, -1, and we're going to go 3 more left. End up at -4. So we find that -1 plus -3 is -4. In this example, look, there is no overlap whatsoever. No overlap. So what that's showing is addition. So what's going on here? If the two numbers have the same sign, there will be no overlap. They'll either both be going this way, or they'll both be going that way. No overlap. That'll be addition. But if the numbers had different signs, we saw this kind of situation where we had an overlap, therefore subtraction. Let's look at another way. Well, there was one more example, but I'm going to leave that one to you. Let's look at another way to remember how to combine integers, and that was with thinking of colored chips. Now, of course, you're thinking, I don't have colored chips. Well, what you could do is you could make little round things with X's in them that could be your negatives, or you could even put a little negative sign, kind of like this, and then your positives could look like that. For me, because I have the smart board here, it's kind of convenient, I have red and black. So I'm going to call black my positives and red my negatives. Let's look at this exact same example. I'm sorry, I want to start with something like this, 7 and -5. So I'm going to put 7 black chips in the bowl. That stands for my positive 7. And I'm going to combine with that 5 negative chips, red. Okay, now what we do in this case is we start gathering together what we were calling 0 pairs. Now, why are we calling them 0 pairs? Because a +1 and a -1 equals 0. So they kind of cancel each other. So I gathered all these pairs, and basically what you're going to be doing is taking them away. You're going to take them out, take them away. Take away means subtract. What are we left with? Positive 2. It's another visual to show you that even though we're combining, even though we're adding, we're actually subtracting. Let's look at this one. -1 plus -3. Well, those are all red. -1 and -3. What am I left with? 4 red chips. -4. There were no 0 pairs to bundle up and take away. It was all addition. So it's that same kind of idea, and then yet there was actually a third thing that I presented to you earlier in the year, and that was this flow chart. Remember this? I love this flow chart. This is actually my favorite, but you do what works best for you. Or maybe you're going to come up with something different. But I'm trying to give you suggestions to help you remember. So we're kind of centering just on this bottom part for a moment. And basically it just says, do the numbers have the same sign? Well, no, do they? If they do, add and keep the sign. If they do not, subtract and take the sign of the bigger. So sometimes I sort of even put this little visual here like 2 smiley faces, same sign, and then over here a smile and a frown, 2 different signs. But you know, whatever, it's just my cute little thing to do. You might think of something different. You're going to, and then of course on the next slide, I have that written out in words for you, so you can kind of figure out what you like best. When you come into class tomorrow, there's other things in your packet you're going to be working on. We have word problems here, we have some other problems here, so you're going to be kind of working on that kind of stuff. I want to hop back up to here and remind you what subtraction is, okay? Now, here's the thing to remember about subtraction. And earlier in the year, guys, I had you say this 3 times. Hopefully you're going to remember. We said it out loud 3 times. When you subtract, you add the opposite. When you subtract, you add the opposite. When you subtract, you add the opposite. And we had a couple little mnemonics, a couple little ways to remember this. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not really a Yankees fan. I'm all about the Pirates, Pittsburgh Pirates. They're coming up. They're getting better. Next year's going to be their year. But we can use New York Yankees to remember this. No, yes, yes. Or if you're a big Midwestern fan, you could do the Kansas City Chiefs. Keep, change, change. But in any case, what you're really doing is when you subtract, you add the opposite. So, we also have some examples here of subtraction. So I'm going to kind of remind you how that add the opposite one. So we have this first thing, and you have this in your packet as well. 3 take away 8. When you subtract, you keep the first thing, keep, Kansas City, change minus to plus, change the 8 to a negative 8. Now you know how to do that, that's your addition rule. That was KCC. Here's another subtraction. When you subtract, you add the opposite, so keep the 9, change minus to add, opposite of 4 is negative 4. Third example, negative 5 minus 4. I'm going to use the New York Yankees this time. Okay? So, no change, yes change, yes change. And then you're going to use your number line, use your chips, use a flow chart to do your addition rules. So again, the flow chart itself kind of showed you this, that subtraction is just one extra step on the beginning of this procedure. So you take subtraction, and you're actually changing it to add, and then come down and follow your same add rules. So that was that. The only final thing, we're almost done, guys. Yay! And again, this is, oh my gosh, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days of lesson during the year. We're going to review multiplication and division. Luckily, those are much, much easier. So, for multiplying integer, you just simply say, is there an even amount of negative factors? An even amount. Even means 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, whatever. That's even numbers. Is there an even amount of negative factors? If the answer is yes, multiplying the answer is positive. If the answer is no, multiplying the answer is negative. It's that easy. Just have to remember and keep it separate from your addition rules. Dividing integers. Do the numbers have the same sign? Same question we asked in our adding. If the answer is yes, the answer is positive. Divide and the answer is positive. If the numbers do not have the same sign, divide and the answer is negative. So that was our integer rules. I might do a couple examples here of multiplying and dividing, but basically, because this is all review, you're going to come in class tomorrow, you're going to look at the flip it sheet and decide which group do you belong in, A, B, C, or D. You're going to come into the room, tell me which group you belong in, and then we're going to get busy with reviewing integers and reviewing other topics. Let's just go right to this page, and I just want to jump down here to B down here. And they're asking us to evaluate this when A is negative 30, B is 5, C is negative 2. So what you basically have to do is you substitute in negative 30 for A, 5 for B, and negative 2 for C. So I'm going to substitute in here. So A, negative 30. Fraction bar on the bottom, B, and then C. Remember, a fraction bar, you do the top, do the bottom, and then divide, because the fraction bar is a grouping symbol. So now we're going to have negative 30 on the top. We did the top. Now we're going to do the bottom. 5 times negative 2, negative 10. Because is there an even amount of negatives? No, there is not. So the answer is negative. Last step. We're going to divide. Negative 30 divided by negative 10. Do the numbers have the same sign? Yes, they do. So the quotient or the answer will be positive. So 30 divided by 10 is 3. That's it for integers and absolute value. Just kind of putting it all together in one day. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Or if it happens to be Friday, I'll see you Monday. And we'll get into class and start working together on remembering integer rules. See ya!